Hello and welcome. This video will pertain to water wars. I found this segment from the Bad Faith YouTube channel to be interesting, and I figured we could watch it together. So, the host of the Bad Faith YouTube channel is Brianna Joy. She is an attorney and a political commentator, and she is interviewing Jordan Chariton. And Jordan Chariton has his own YouTube channel called Status Coup. I have shared his content on my channel previously. So, thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy.
Story, there was similarly an occupying Canada story, or making Canada the 51st state. And some weeks ago or months ago, when these issues first started percolating, it seemed like more of this sort of chum to the base, like weird symbolic stuff that Trump was saying as a show of power. There was the renaming the Gulf of Mexico. All of this seemed part and parcel of the same thing. But I watched you conduct one of your interviews, and your focus on water, generally speaking, and the Flint water crisis, and focusing on water wars issues with that particular guest made me start to think a little differently about whether or not was a broader geopolitical game at foot with respect to both the Canada story and the resource that is the Great Lakes, which I believe are the largest body of fresh water in the world, and also Greenland, for both its sort of position with respect to the Arctic and how shipping lanes are opening up in the Arctic as ice caps melt, and because of mineral resources that are newly available in Greenland as a consequence, again, of global warming. Can you speak to whether or not you think there's a there outside of Trump just being Donald Trump when he's talking about renegotiating the border with Canada?
Oh, when it comes to Canada, it's very clear that Trump wants to steal as much of Canada's water as possible. We do share the Great Lakes, which, for those that don't know, the Great Lakes, we share 4 of the Great Lakes with Canada. One of them, Lake Michigan, we have complete control over. But the Great Lakes provides 20% of the whole world's fresh surface water. Some of the cleanest water in the world. And we share it with Canada, but Trump has complained now to former Prime Minister Trudeau that, you have too much, it's not fair, even though we control more of the Great Lakes than Canada. We control 60,000 square miles, they control 35,000. But essentially, Trump, there's a lot of different reasons he wants more of Canada's water. Number one, obviously, we've had drought in America. His solution for it with releasing dams in California, the water did not go to LA, is not the right solution, but we do have drought. So he wants more water from Canada, who, by the way, Canada has 2 million freshwater lakes, 13 river basins and lakes are straddling our border. So there's a lot of water in Canada he wants access to. Based on what I could see, you need a lot of water for AI, which his administration has.
Is that to cool the?
Yeah, so you need a lot of water for AI to cool the servers. You need a lot of water for these data centers that you need for AI. Similar, by the way, for crypto. Crypto uses a lot of water, but AI, you need a whole lot of water for the data centers, and he wants the United States to be the AI capital of the world. You need a lot of water for hydropower, which is, when water's moved, turning it into electricity. So dams, it's a cheaper, one of the cheaper forms of energy. Hydropower has been along the U.S.-Canada border. Water has been used for hydropower plants. You need a lot of water for fracking. He's talking about drill, baby, drill. You need a whole lot of water, raw water, in particular to frack. That was actually one of the causes, which we'll get to, of the Flint water crisis. And a lot.
And I want to comment that for anyone thinking Jordan Chariton or Brianna are for either political party, they are not. I think Brianna Joy Gray considers herself a leftist, but I think Jordan Cheriton is a little bit in the center. He is more so left, but more importantly, neither Brianna nor Jordan uh, were going to vote for Biden or Trump. Neither of them believe in the duopoly, much like myself. I don't believe in Democrats or Republicans. I have no political affiliation. I feel that for all the centuries this country has been running, um, sure, we've had some good things happen, but we've had a lot of terrible things happen too, especially when you consider all of the wars that the US has been involved in. It's one of the reasons I have no political affiliation. I do not consent to war. And it seems like it doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated with, you're somehow always for war, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I am always anti-war. So just to put that out there, my channel is not political whatsoever. I have no political affiliation. And even if I'm sharing content from conservatives or progressives, I don't share content from liberals, but I will share content from progressives, um, and people on the left and people on the right, some libertarians and some anarchists, but more so, I don't identify as anything. In my opinion, there's no political party good enough for me. It's that simple. So just putting that out there. My channel is not political. Uh, I I wish more people were educated about their political party that they choose to be affiliated with. I really do. I feel like a lot of people who are Republican um, don't understand their own political affiliation, and a lot of people who are Democrats don't understand their political affiliation. So anyway, back to the video.
A lot of water for manufacturing. So auto plants, steel plants. If he's actually serious about bringing industry back here, I don't think he is, but his stated goal. So there's a lot of different reasons you need water. And America, we've had water shortages and water aquifers running dry. We've seen it recently, not just in the Southwest. Folks focused on the Southwest, like LA, New Mexico, but there's been issues in Virginia at a military base that had a water shortage recently. Florida has had water shortages. So there's a lot of reasons he wants water, but essentially, if you look at wars throughout the 20th century, they've been fought over oil. With climate change, drought, some experts have said you could be seeing wars fought over water, and Trump thinks water was not part of NAFTA. So, and water on Canada's side is not controlled federally by Canada. So different provinces in Canada create treaties with America. So it's not one treaty between Canada and America over water use. It's several different treaties with different provinces in Canada. So essentially, Trump's saying, hey, we already control most of the Great Lakes, but we want all of it. And I actually think that's more of what is behind his, whatever you want to call it, dream of making Canada the 51st state, to control all the water, among other things, because, like I said, there's a whole lot of different things you need water for.
I don't mean to sound naive, but I mean, there's a lot of water in the Great Lakes. I know everything's a finite resources, and if the world truly starts to crumble the way, it very well might, I can appreciate, I don't, not morally, but sort of geopolitically, the value of having absolute control instead of partial control. But I'm having trouble understanding, like, okay, if there's water shortages at a military base in Virginia, you want to occupy Canada to take all of the Great Lakes. It's a lake. I'm sorry. Like, I know I'm going to sound silly, super naive here, but like, you can't, like, whatever you want to draw out of it, draw down on it. You're concerned that Canada's population, that's 1/10 the size of ours, is going to disproportionately somehow like empty the lake of its water and draw down resources in a way that precludes America from using it the way it needs to or wants to. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. So the Great Lakes Compact, which was formed in the late 2000s, basically has limits on how much diversion you could have and how much water you could draw out of the Great Lakes. So even though it seems like an infinite supply, that why do we need Canada's water? We have it here. There's limits, which Trump doesn't seem to care about limits to other things, but there's limits to how much water we could draw out of the Great Lakes for, manufacturing or AI or all the things I just talked about. So that is why I think he's trying to get around the limits to the Great Lakes water supply here in America by basically saying we need to renegotiate. So the 30% you have, we want, 15 or 20. So there are limits, because on the surface, it does seem like, don't we have enough water from the Great Lakes, et cetera? He also just ended, it's not just the Great Lakes, he just paused the Columbia River, the negotiations over the Columbia River, which starts in British Columbia on the western side of Canada and goes into Washington State and Oregon here over similar reasons, basically saying that he wants to basically move the boundaries so America has more of it, is the simplest answer. He wants to change either take Canada to be America or change the boundaries so America has more of the water, because in his mind, which doesn't typically understand how this works, he thinks, hey, let's not do anything about the actual source of the drought, which is carbon emissions, the climate, fossil fuels. Let's just get more water from the Columbia River in British Columbia for the drought in California. But that's not going to stop the burning of the planet. That's a Band-Aid for a gaping gunshot wound. So it's not just the Great Lakes. He just did that. The Biden administration, there was kind of an impasse between the Biden administration and Canada over the Columbia River Treaty. That was that started in 1961, that treaty between British Columbia and Western states. But again, that is a major water source that Trump wants access to for hydropower plants and, drought, because he's saying, hey, we have these wildfires because of forest management, and, we're not tapping. He called it, I actually have it here. He called the Columbia River a very large faucet that they have a very large faucet that we should utilize up there in Canada.
Cool. I mean, when you talk specifically about the water being used for AI and cooling servers, one part of my brain is like, well, obviously this is the choice to, do AI is obviously generating a lot of emissions that are driving climate change as well. But also it is very evocative of exactly what happened in Flint. This idea that some kind of industry requires clean, high quality water raises the concern that clean, high quality water will be prioritized for profit seeking of one industry group or another. And human beings are going to have to default into a lesser quality water supply. For people who don't remember exactly what set off the Flint water crisis, can you take us back to that decision point?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people, based on the media's crappy reporting, think Flint was just some tragic mistake because government officials were trying to cut corners and save money. It was actually a privatization scam. So the very long story short, Flint got its water from the Great Lakes we're talking about for 50 years. It came from the city of Detroit. Detroit pumped it out of Lake Huron, which is one of the Great Lakes. Detroit treated the water, added the chemicals that are added to water to make it safe, and then piped it to the city of Flint, 70 miles. And there were no quality problems. There was just Flint and locals in Genesee County, which Flint is part of, were complaining because Detroit kept raising Flint's rates. So it was really not a water quality issue as much as you're price gouging us. Flint folks were saying Detroit. And there was a lot of corruption problems in Detroit and the Detroit Water Detroit Water Authority. So folks on the ground, I mean, this is dating back to before the water switch. They had visions of, well, why don't we create our own water system in Flint? So we're not reliant on getting water from Detroit. will regionalize it, meaning take control away from Detroit and create a regional water pipeline, which essentially was code for a privatized water system. So they came up with the brilliant idea, brilliant is sarcasm, let's create an identical water pipeline coming out of the same source, the lake, going the same exact path of the existing Detroit water pipeline, and going to Flint. The only difference would be the Detroit water pipeline that gave Flint finished treated water. So by the time it got to Flint, the water plant didn't really have to do much to it. It was ready to go to customers. The pipeline, the privatized pipeline, was going to be raw water. Well, what do you need raw water for? We spoke about some of those things. At the time, the Republican governor wanted to frack the hell out of Michigan. That was a big natural gas push. You need a lot of water for fracking. Also, they were openly saying this is going to explode the blue economy. So similar things to what we're talking about. More of the water for this new pipeline was going to be used for industry rather than residents, for meat packing, the auto industry, steel plants, manufacturing plants that need water. So the pipeline was billed to the people of Flint. This is going to save you money compared to the rates we're paying in Detroit. But there was a problem. Flint in 2013, 2014 was broke for a lot of reasons. The offshoring of jobs. If you've seen Michael Moore's Roger and Me, you could see Flint was at one time, the bastion of the American middle class. The auto industry was born in Flint. But for a lot of reasons, by the turn of the century, it was a rotting economic corpse. In 2013, 2014, it had no credit rating. It could not legally borrow more money. So an unelected emergency manager that was appointed by the governor. So democracy was canceled in Flint, like actual democracy being canceled, not what the Democrats have been warning about. An unelected emergency manager, along with some kind of local players and the governor, they came up with a fake emergency to allow a nearly bankrupt Flint to borrow $100 million to help fund this completely unnecessary privatized new water pipeline. And once they did that, which criminal charges were filed based on that fraud, they said, hey, while we're building this new water pipeline, which is going to take about 2 years, we'll save money by just using the Flint River. If you lived in Flint, you knew the Flint River had been dumped in for like 100 years. General Motors dumped its waste, Dow Chemical, DuPont.
Comment on that. Just to comment on that, what Jordan Cheriton is saying. The same is true for where I live in Massachusetts. I live near the Merrimack River, and it's so polluted. The same is true for the Hudson River in New York. It's so heavily polluted. To think that government agencies would ever rely on river water anywhere surrounding major cities just seems asinine to me. It's disgusting, it's crazy, but good point on from Jordan Cheriton. Good stuff.
I mean, residents joked to me when I got there, like they dumped bodies in there. It looked green to me the first time I saw it, very polluted. So they said, let's use the polluted river and let's use the Flint water plant, which had not been used as a full-time water treatment plant in half a century. Let's use this plant to treat this polluted water. And as my book details, it was essentially the equivalent of these Boeing planes falling apart midair and saying, just get the plane and we'll get it up there and we'll add the parts as we fly. So that's what happened. The plant was missing.
If you guys aren't aware of the Boeing airplanes, the Boeing whistleblowers who disclosed that Boeing was cutting corners. And if you guys don't know, I used to be a safety trainer. I used to have to study Department of Regulations, like Department of Transportation regulations. Yeah, what Boeing was doing is like the worst thing that a company can do, that a corporation can do. Cut corners, especially when you're a corporation that manufactures airplanes. Like, what the fuck? Like, they were cutting corners to make things cheaper for Boeing. And guys, that's essentially what a lot of corporations around the world are doing in 2025. As of 2025, a lot of corporations have decided to cut corners, um, and to put profit before safety, to put profit and production before safety, before people, before their workers, and before their customers. Yeah, so Boeing, an airplane manufacturer, a corporation, was cutting corners, and multiple whistleblowers have come forward from Boeing saying that a lot of the specs, they couldn't follow a lot of the specs, they couldn't follow a lot of the regulations because they were getting directions from higher ups, from management to make it cheaper, to do it simpler. You know, even if the parts weren't fitting together right, even if the parts were made for other parts that were more expensive, but Boeing wanted to use cheaper parts, so the pieces, the parts weren't fitting. Like, it's it's the world we live in now, guys. It's the world we live in now, where multiple corporations around the world are increasingly putting profits before people, and increasingly there are whistleblowers, increasingly there are customers, there are consumers as well noticing the downgrade of quality in their products, the concern for safety, because corporations are choosing profit over safety. It's not good, guys. It's scary shit.
In crucial equipment. It was quoted as needing $61 million in upgrades before switching to the river. They didn't make those upgrades. They didn't even have the proper equipment to add the proper chemicals for safety. And within weeks, residents were receiving water that was brown, smelly, kids with rashes, people's hair falling out. And what came next was what I've been covering and investigating for almost a decade now. One of the biggest government cover-ups of the 21st century. I think this makes Watergate, which was the 20th century, look like nothing because nobody died in Watergate. It involves the EPA, the state of Michigan, the local city of Flint, the county. You have Wall Street banks involved. So essentially a privatization scam for an unnecessary water pipeline poisoned this city. And one thing I left out real quick, they didn't have to switch to this new water system. The city of Detroit didn't want to lose Flint because Flint was its biggest water customer. So the city of Detroit at the last minute offered Flint a nearly 50% discount. So like go to the mall, everything's half off. Flint would have saved money if it just stayed on Detroit's water, but it was never about saving the residents money. It was about making money, banks making money who were issuing the bonds, landowners who mysteriously purchased land along the route of the pipeline, and industry who was going to get cheaper water.
I mean,
So again, I will leave the link in the description below to the video if you would like to watch it without my commentary. The video is over an hour long, so I wanted to make my video short. But thank you all for joining me. I hope you were as educated about the Flint situation as I am, as I was. There, just like with Hurricane Helene, I made videos about Hurricane Helene. There are still people who need help. There are still people who lost everything and received no help, no assistance from any government agency. These government agencies that our tax dollars pay for. So, the same is true for Flint, Michigan. You know, those people still have shitty water. And, you know, the mainstream media talks about stories like this once in a while. But as soon as a more popular story comes along, a more profitable story comes along, we stop hearing about things like Hurricane Helene and Flint. We stop hearing about them, and people assume that everything's fine because the mainstream media is not talking about it anymore. People assume everything's fine because these major news outlets aren't talking about those things anymore. They want to keep up with the high profile stories. So I'm just saying it's important for all of us to stay informed on what is happening around us in this country and around the world, because inevitably these things are going to directly impact you. If other communities are suffering and struggling with no help because of corporate greed and because of government incompetence, it's only a matter of time before your community suffers the same. Thank you for watching.